Hey, welcome back to the channel, Bridging the Gap Student to Engineers, where professionals in the STEM industries share insight with students. Today we're going to be talking about looking at data from engineering schools and how that can be useful in choosing the right school. I'm going to just walk through a bunch of different websites and hopefully you can see something that will be useful to you. All right, so I started by typing top engineering schools. If you're thinking about going into engineering, this is a place a lot of people start. Um, but you have to recognize that there are certain measures that go into these rankings that are not necessarily indicating that they're the best thing for you. So let me just walk you through this. I'm going to pull up a few examples and show you the data for a few different schools. And if you are looking at different schools or if you want to just follow along, definitely use this process for yourself. So I Googled top engineering schools. You can see a few here, and then I'm going to go and click on the more schools. This, what this does is it just brings up a long list of engineering schools. You'll see as I scroll down, it's loading more. And this is, again, the US News and World Report ranking, so definitely not something that's going to necessarily say that it's the best thing for you. So I'm going to just pull a few of these schools out and show you the data and show you what the schools are saying. So we're going to start with University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign. I'm going to click on here and we'll walk through some of the data that's on here. So as an overview, it's a public school, it's a four-year institution. You will find that pretty much all engineering schools will say they're a four-year. That is as opposed to maybe a two-year that only offers two-year degrees. If you want more information, they all have a link to Wikipedia. And then average cost after aid, graduation rate, and acceptance rate. Okay, so average cost after aid is based on students that are whose families make a certain amount of money. I think it's $100,000. This is definitely not something that you can just take the number and say, I assume that's going to be my cost. We'll get more into costs when we go a few tabs over. But it should give you a good understanding, at least initially, of how expensive the schools are. Just to quickly go over here, like MIT's average cost after aid is $5,000. That indicates that the school has a large endowment and provides a lot of scholarships. University of California, Berkeley, $15,000. Caltech, $29,000. $15,000 for the one that we're looking at, University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign. So at a high level, you can use those numbers to understand that while there is a much larger sticker price on some of these schools, the aid that they provide is significantly lower in some cases. Okay, the graduation rate for the school. This is really important because you want to get through school. Probably the worst case scenario is to start a school with an objective of getting a degree and having lots of loans and paying a lot of money and spending your time to end up without a degree. So graduation rate is important. One thing I will caution you is that this is graduated within 6 years. That is not a really good time frame. I would prefer if these were within 4 years, but the 4-year numbers are a little bit harder to find just from a lot of this summary data. And then also, it's for the school as a whole. This is not just for the engineering school within the University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign. So for these large public schools, you're going to see different numbers than some of the schools that are more focused or have different nuances to them. But it is something to be aware of. If you are surrounded by people who are dropping out of school, it's a little bit harder to get through than if you are surrounded by people who are focused and getting through with no problem. Acceptance rate. So University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign, 60% acceptance. That is a pretty decent acceptance rate. If we go back to the column over here, you can see that some of these are really, really, really small. Caltech and MIT, 4%. If you are shooting for those schools, just understand that there are 96% of applicants do not get in at all. Berkeley, again, is significantly lower. So when you start looking at schools and you're thinking about where you might be able to get in, please do not make the assumption that because you have straight A's or because you've taken great classes or because you are doing wonderful things as a high schooler that you're going to get in. Be practical about what the likelihood of acceptance is, and make sure that you're looking at schools that have an acceptance rate that is high. It is important that you have schools on your list that are not necessarily going to be, just easy for you, but something that you can definitely have some acceptances on your list. Okay, and then the enrollment. So this is a large school, 33,000 undergraduate students. All of them will give you the size for that. So then beyond the overview, so let's go over to admissions. So this is the typical test score, the 25th to 75th percentile of accepted students. So this is not students that enroll, this is the accepted students, and it's basically the middle 50%. So 25% of students who are accepted are higher and 25% are lower. If you're not within these bands, that does not mean you will not get in, or it will mean that you will get in, but just for the students that are accepted. I recently watched a talk about why you should not go to Harvard, is what it's called. I will provide the link here. But it really provides some compelling reasons to go to schools where you're in the top third of the class. That talk was just about SAT math scores, so it was just picking one of these three. But I would encourage you to think about, if you do get accepted to a school, where you fall in these bands. And it's going to be a lot more comfortable for you if you're in the top part of these bands or even above the bands. So reaching to a stretch school, hoping that you'll get in, and then ending up being the bottom of the class as far as people who are accepted will mean a lot more challenge for you going through school than if you come into a school where you are at the top of the band, at top of the class. You will have an easier time at the school, which will offer you more opportunities and more flexibility with your time to do other things that will enrich your experience rather than just focusing so much time on getting through class. If you are interested in understanding a little bit more about my thoughts on that, please let me know. I'm considering creating a video for it, but we'll do it when there's demand for it. So let me know. All right, so cost. All right, so this cost after aid, this 15,000 is what we saw on the first page, but what you'll see is the numbers vary greatly, even when household income is in little bands. There's a huge variation. The cost before aid, 32,134 in this case, is a price that you can get more details on from the school. So I encourage you to go to the link on these, calculate your cost, and put in some of your numbers, and the school will let you know based on your stats what they expect to be able to give you for aid. That's before putting in the FAFSA and all of that. It's a really good way of getting some preliminary numbers when you're just shopping for schools. But as you can see here, for households with a very small income, they expect you to pay very small amounts. This is provided sometimes by loans, sometimes by grants, sometimes by work study, and a whole package. So don't expect that that it's going to be just all handed to you. There are some things you're going to have to pay back and some things you're going to have to work for. Again, if we just looked at this 15,000, if your family makes more than $110,000, the number here is 28,000. So those are definitely very different numbers that you need to consider. But the best way to get the real data for yourself is to go to the website. All of the schools will have a net price calculator, NPC, that will give you some information. Okay, so let's go to programs. So within the University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign, it will tell you the percent of graduates, this is the 2022 class, that majored in that. What you can pick out from here is the popular majors. In a school so large, it's really hard to say that computer science, for example, would be a small school, even though it's only 3.2% of the population. But once you get down, if you just keep going, you'll see some of the smaller schools, industrial engineering, 0.9%. So it will give you an understanding of how much of the school is focused on that. If I was looking at this school and engineering was all at the bottom, I would say that, you know, maybe it's not really a technical focused school. But as this has played out here for the University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign, I am seeing not very many STEM type careers on the bottom. I'm seeing them mostly on the top. There's a few that are very specific, engineering technologies. I would say this is in contrast to Purdue, which has a pretty large engineering technology program. And we'll compare this to another school that we'll look at in a little bit to understand what the school's focuses are. Okay, outcomes. So I've done videos on outcomes. Within the channel, you can see that there are several that are posted. Those are called deep dives into schools. And so if you're interested in specific schools, please let me know and I will do a video on that, but there are a few available already. Okay, so graduation rate and annual income. Let's start with the graduation rate. So again, I don't really like the 6-year and the 8-year. That's far too long to be trying to go through school. But what this is showing you is that 85% of the first-time full-time students are getting through in 6 years, as opposed to other full-time students have a higher graduation rate. One thing you'll notice here is that there's a 2% gap between 85 and 87 here, between graduating in 6 years and 8 years. That means that 2% of students are taking between 6 and 8 years to graduate. Again, not super successful. Things happen in life, but I like to see more of what I'm seeing over here, 89%, 89%, which means that if you're going to get through, you're going to get through in 6 years, and you don't have a lot of people that are just trickling through and extending their time as a student. When you look at the cost of school, one thing that can skyrocket your costs is in turning a 4-year degree into a 5, 6, 7, 8-year degree, where you're spending a lot of time and money paying for all those living costs and everything that you really wanted to get in 4 years. Okay, and then the typical annual income of grads, again, University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign is more of a general school, not STEM focused, and so this is going to factor in all the different majors, but 77,000 is a pretty healthy number for income after graduation. Now, one thing to note, and this is different than what you'll find on school websites, is this is the Department of Education data for 10 years after enrolling. So 10 years after enrolling means that they've got a couple years under their belt and they're gone to go get jobs. If you look at some of the schools that are more liberal arts focused, sometimes the smaller schools or less recognized schools, these numbers will be significantly lower. But it's something to consider when you're talking about your return on investment when going to a school. Okay, and then in the video about choosing the right school for you, one of the things I talk about is diversity. it is very important, whether or not you are a minority yourself, being able to work with people from all different backgrounds is very, very important, in your school life and in your work life. And so, um, if you can spend time as a student being surrounded by people from all different backgrounds, that's going to be very beneficial to you. So in this data, you can see it's divided by race, gender, and income levels. Um, and being exposed to people in all of these different areas is going to be very, very important. So the more diversity you can see in these numbers, the better off you're going to be. One thing to note is that the overall statistics that there's more females or higher percent of females in colleges overall right now than there are males. And so the higher male percentage is typically only in schools that are more STEM focused from what I have seen. If you see something else, let me know. Leave a comment. We can have a discussion. And then University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign, again, is 40% white. I think this is, not the most diverse school ever, but, it's much better than being in one where you're seeing really, really, really high numbers for one ethnicity or one race or another. So that's the University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign. What I'm going to do is I'm going to just scroll down here to find a private school. And we're going to go with Harvey Mudd College. This is in Claremont, California. It's a private nonprofit 4-year. Again, this is just to show you an example of how you can compare and contrast. So the cost after aid, again, we talked about how that's just a really high level number that you can take or leave and look at more details. The graduation rate is higher, but the acceptance rate is significantly lower. So if you are looking at this school, be prepared to possibly be in the 90% of applicants who don't get in. Another significant difference is 905 undergraduates. At University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign, we had 33,000. So your experience at this school is going to be very, very different. For many students, this is going to be smaller than their high school. So considering whether or not you want to go to a college that's larger or smaller than your high school is something to consider. And something else to note, this is a private nonprofit liberal arts school that specializes in STEM. So it is a STEM school, which we will see when we get to the rest of the data, but it is something to look at when you read the summary. Look out for those types of pieces of information. Okay, admissions. So we talk about the bands and it's good to be near the top of the bands. For ACT and SAT math, you're not really going to be able to be above the band because these numbers are right up to the max. So be aware of that if you're looking at this school. It's going to be, you're going to need to have near perfect test scores at least to be near the top of your class. Okay, so we talk about dollars. Again, you'll see the breakdown by income level and how that goes up. The cost before aid is significantly higher than the other one. One thing to note on the state schools is that the numbers for before aid, you need to look closely at whether or not that's in state or out of state, where the private schools will be the same for everyone. But one thing to look on here is that the sticker price, $84,000, is significantly different than any of the other numbers that you're seeing. So don't let the sticker price of a school scare you off. It is always worth having the conversation about what aid they provide and how much their endowment is, and if you can get scholarships and all of those questions. There are a number of, especially the higher rated colleges that have large endowments, that they want to make sure that if you are the type of student that can go there, that they are helping you pay for that and that cost is not a factor. Okay, so Urbana-Champaign, the top was psychology. All of these percents were really small, but if you see on here, just like that summary we read, this is a liberal arts school that focuses on STEM. Pretty much all these majors that we're seeing areas of study are STEM, except for we've got some language here at the bottom and music. So they have a little bit of other things that you can do, but the majority of the students are going to be in engineering or math and computer science. Computer science and math and computer science. Math. So big themes here. If these are things that you are interested in looking into or interested in going into, a school like this is going to have you surrounded by people who have the same interests in you. And probably because of this, there's a lot more options to explore within the school. You can't necessarily definitely read that from the data, but it's something to consider and something to look into if that's something you're interested in. So outcome. Okay, so when we looked at the University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign data, the graduation rate was in the 80s. This is in the 90s. I would expect that Harvey-Mudd provides a lot more support for their students to make sure that they have what they need to get through. Again, there's a 1% difference. So there are a few students that take between 6 and 8 years, but the vast majority of them, a very healthy number, get through in 6 years. Okay, then we look at annual income. This is significantly higher. 128 versus 77, I think is what the other one was. Again, 10 years after enrolling, but if you're looking for a school that's going to provide you with a really healthy income after you get out, this is maybe a good place. Now, another thing to consider is that the other one's in Urbana-Champaign, Illinois, where the cost of living is significantly different than in Claremont, California, or in Southern California in general. So while this income may be higher, in this case, I would say it's probably significantly higher, and so that it would overcome the difference in cost of living, but it is something to consider. You may see a lot of schools that are in higher cost of living areas having higher numbers here, but it is something to consider because you go to school so you can get a job and you can make money. And if you spend 4 years in school or more and aren't better off than if you didn't go, then why go? So absolutely look at these numbers, but take them with a little bit of grain of salt. And then again, diversity. So numbers are very different from in Illinois. The region that Harvey-Mudd is in is more diverse from a racial standpoint than Illinois, Urbana-Champaign at least. So this may be a reflection of that, but definitely something to consider and something to understand as you go into this. Nearly equal for male and female, and then income. Okay, so this is where it's very different. The families of the students that go to Harvey-Mudd are much more in the more than $110,000 of income range. So you're going to end up with a different population from an income standpoint than you would at the other school. And from a racial standpoint, it's going to be different. Again, anything that you can get that's diversity is good in my book. So I hope this has been helpful. You can look through the list. I know I Googled top engineering schools, but as I said in the beginning, this just keeps going. So this is not necessarily, just the top 5 or whatever. But use it to get an idea of places that you might want to just at least look at that you haven't looked at before. And to just look at some student data and how that can help you understand what your experience might be there. If you're interested in any more deep dives from any of these schools, let me know, and I can definitely do a quick video. Until next time, thank you.